All right, what's up, party people and magic makers? Destiny here. On this magical Monday, every Monday I will come to you with a mindset video, something for you to think about, something for you to chew on, gnaw on, and really take on for yourself. And as always, if you know of anybody that you would like to share this with, please feel free. This is always like a conversational thing, so if there's something that you like, something that you want to chat about, go ahead and comment below. I love hearing from you guys. And also, if you want to participate in the conversation, I'm going to put a link to my email list. Now, you will get the exact same video that I'm going to do here, but we're having conversations there. So if you want to join in, please feel free. I read every single email, and so we can have some fun with what that looks like and dive in deeper if you don't feel like sharing here. So as you can see with the title of the video, I had a song playing in my head, and I just changed one word to shame. And last week I was really talking about, you know, what shame does and what, like, shame throwing, right, where we purposefully throw shame out to manipulate someone else, right, and how the media is doing that, how other people do it to us, and more importantly, how we're doing it to other people, because we can only be responsible for ourselves. We can only be responsible for the things that we do, and so once we start recognizing that that's what we're doing, we can stop it, right? But also, let me turn this light on, so there we go. Much better lighting, yes. All right, the other thing that I recognize is that one of the ways that we can prevent shame and prevent that trigger that almost I feel like it happens in our hearts, right, where somebody like pokes at something and boom, like it just hurts and it cuts really deep. And one of the ways that we can actually support ourselves and heal that is by talking about it, and by talking about all of the things that we are ashamed of. And so I put out a post on Instagram and in Facebook to play along, and like there was a little meme that you could highlight and tell me what you were ashamed for. And it was really interesting because nobody played along. And when I was asking some of the people that are on my email list and some of my friends, they're like, that's too deep, it's too much, and people may not be ready for it. And I completely understood, like that makes perfect sense, right? So I thought, well, why don't I take the lead and why don't I start this conversation? Okay, so, and again, interestingly enough, last week when I sent out the email, my weekly email, I really boo-booed. And so much so that I love to use personalization, right? And even though we know that that part is automated, normally I just use first names. But the way that I had uploaded things into my new system, the first and last name went into the first name box. So everybody got this email that was like first and last name, and it was like, Destiny D. Haven, are you shame throwing? And I was like, oh my god, like, holy shitballs, if I am not full name, right, calling all of these people on my list, and just bringing me back to, like, that's what my mother used to do, right? When I would, or my dad, when I would get the full name, I knew I was in trouble, and like I would just contract, and I would just be like, oh shit, right? And so, one, if you were on that email list and you got that, my sincerest apologies. It was not the way, and yet I think it kind of, I mean, like, it kind of worked, right? Like, if we're going to talk about shame, hey, why not bring that up? So I was like, oh my gosh. So I was super embarrassed about that, and I even was beating myself up about it, because I was like, I should have known better, I should have done better, and all of that. And so I'm like, this is just a great segue and a great way to start this conversation about what else have I been shamed for. And I do remember, like, growing up, I was shamed for either being Hawaiian or being white, because I am biracial, and so there's a mix there. And so, like, when I was with my Hawaiian side of the family, I was the white girl, and my brothers were the white boys. Like, it was not, you know, like, only picking on me. But then when I went to visit my white or Caucasian side of the family that's from Connecticut, I was the Hawaiian cousin, right? And that's how they would actually introduce me. They're like, oh, this is my cousin from Hawaii, this is my cousin from Hawaii. And I was just like, there's so much more to me than that, right? Like, can you stop with that? Like, how about this is my cousin Destiny? Would that work? Like, could that work? And so like it became a thing, and especially like living in Hawaii and not looking Hawaiian, um, it's so interesting how people assume, right? And like, I almost feel the need to kind of go above and beyond in my Hawaiianness so that they recognize, like, no, she really is Hawaiian because I don't look it. And there's been so many times where people were like, oh, but you're a haole. And I'm like, yes, I am. But I'm also Hawaiian, right? And even when people were like, oh, you're Hawaiian, I'm like, yes, but I'm also Caucasian, right? Like, I have both. And the looks and the side eye that I would get from people that didn't believe I was Hawaiian, because for them I wasn't enough Hawaiian to look Hawaiian. Like, I felt shame about that. Like, somehow I needed to look different, and because I didn't look the way that they wanted me to, like I wasn't enough, and I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't doing all the things, right? And so like that brought upon like a really deep, heavy sadness. And then to find other things, like I was a crybaby, and I realize now that was me being very empathic, and I was feeling other people's stuff and not knowing how to express it for myself. But like I didn't know that at the time, and so I felt like some deep shame around that. I was shamed for being too quiet, and so then I swung the pendulum to the other extreme, and I got really, really like outspoken and loud, and then I was too loud. I was too much of a know-it-all, right? All of these things that like can be a real positive attribute to me, I chose to allow the shame to sit in, and other people telling me what to do, to like let that just really take over who I was. Like I didn't even know who I was because I was so busy listening to what other people were saying I was. And so like this is what we do when something feels like too much or too little or is not in agreement with the beliefs that we have. We will say something. We have to, right? Like it's kind of just what happens. But I think the piece that doesn't work is when we don't listen to what the other person has to say back. And that's what we're seeing happening in the media, on social media. We're seeing like a lot of blanket statement posts that are not true at all. Like people who wear masks live in fear. My husband and I do not live in fear. And we wear masks, like, why not? We don't, like, it seems so simple for us, like, all right, you know, and it's like, it's something kind that we can do, and it doesn't, I mean, we're wearing it for, like, maybe 20 minutes, like, who cares? But then, you know, when we go to the stores and people are like, you're stupid for wearing masks, like, you actually don't know that about us. You're making a blanket statement assumption based on some meme that you saw, and, you know, like, so what? So now we have a society where we're being shamed for wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or supporting Trump or not supporting Trump, or supporting Biden or not supporting Biden. Like, there's more than enough shame to go around. We don't need to keep adding more to people, right? Like, they're already living with a lot of shame within themselves and not fucking talking about it. So it's bubbling up, and that's what we're seeing, just blah, all over the place. So after you make your statement, really be open and curious as to why people are doing what they're doing, because they have a reason for doing it. They know why they're doing it. And it's like, why though, right? And that's where the change will start happening, because we're coming from a place of curiosity rather than a place of blame or shame. And so like, let's start talking about the things that we're ashamed of, right? Even like the deep-seated stuff, and get that out there so that it doesn't trigger us and it doesn't hurt us anymore. Because why? We don't want it to, right? We don't want it to. It doesn't have to. It just doesn't have to, right? Going back to some of the other things that I have been shamed for is like not being a parent yet, right? Like I'm 41 and like my doctors are just like, you sure you want to take this on? Like, it's not safe for your body, it's not safe for this. And then, like, to have other people, like, oh, no kids? Or, even better, on Mother's Day, when they're like, oh, happy Mother's Day, and I'm like, not a mom, right? Not a mom. Like, they're saying it because it's the day, and I get it. But at the same time, like, it cuts. And so it's like, okay, if we start talking about this, I have met so many, oh, and like this just like brings me to tears because I met so many amazing people don't have kids. Some by choice, some like it didn't work out, and like that's just not the way it happened for them. And like they tried, and I was like, I get it. They're like, you know, a little further along in the journey, but yet at the same time, like they're so amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't have even like known, right? Wouldn't have even known unless they shared, unless I shared. And that's the beauty about sharing our shame and talking about it, is that we meet other people who are like, oh, me too. Like I had that experience too, or something similar. And what winds up happening is that, like, you know, when you have a kettle boiling on the water and it like starts to go, right? It's like making that little noise. If you take that cover off and the steam comes out, instead of coming out of that little tiny hole, it comes out of the bigger hole, and the noise just kind of goes away. That's what happens. That's what happens when we start talking about the shame and sharing our shame. Like that kettle, that little tiny hole doesn't make noise anymore. Right? It's this big one, and it just all comes out at one time, and there's a release and a healing that takes place. And that's where we get to as a human whole, as all of humanity, to come from a place of deep understanding and compassion. And I think that's what's missing right now, is everybody's dealing with their own shame that they're not realizing that other people have it too. And so I thought, why not? Why not start this conversation, and let's talk about our shame, and let's just put it out there and see how many other people like have the same shame, right? Like if we can make it a game, why not? And have fun getting it out there, because like we're holding so much in that it's not supporting us and it's actually hurting us. So why not change that? Why not make it look a little bit different, you know? So let's start having that conversation, and let's talk about shame, baby. All right, until next week, have a wonderful one. Play along, right? I'm going to be putting up posts this whole week about it. And let's chat. Let's have this conversation, okay? Peace.